On today's episode, I'll preview Blackhawks prospect Roman Kantserov's final season under contract in Russia, and I'll also talk through some tendencies we can expect to see from new head coach Jeff Blashill.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Welcome back to yet another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can go and check me out on X at Jack Bushman2 if you haven't done so already, but make sure to go and follow my Strictly Blackhawks account. That can be found at Talkin' Hockey, so that way you don't miss out on any of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Got yet another great show on tap here today as I'll keep my new prospect preview series going with 2023 second round pick Roman Kantserov in the KHL, breaking down his projected role and expectations with Metallurg. I'll also go through some coaching tendencies that we've recently learned about new bench boss Jeff Blashill, and I'll also touch on the big rig, Pat Maroon, being hired as an assistant coach by the Muskegon Lumberjacks in the USHL during segment 3. Real quick though, I first got to let you all know that today's episode is sponsored by Monarch Money. Go and take control of your finances right now by using our promo code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps at monarchmoney.com, and you'll also get 50% off on your first year. All right, Blackhawks fans, it's yet another prospect preview to begin today's episode. And I've, of course, recently gone through season previews for Anton Frondel in the SHL, as well as Sasha Boisvert, who's now with Boston University in the NCAA. Go and check out those two shows if you haven't already to get the full scoop on two very noteworthy prospects before they likely make the leap to the professional ranks when their respective seasons come to an end. The prospect that I'm going to be previewing here today already plays professionally over in Russia, but is likely going to be joining Frondel and Boisvert and hitting North America when his season comes to a close. I'm talking about Roman Kantserov, the 44th pick in the 2023 NHL draft, second round selection by the Hawks. And he's now listed at 5'9", 176 pounds as a winger, and he's set to turn 21 years old in just about a month's time in September. And Kantserov, since being drafted by the Blackhawks, has spent the last 2 years playing for Metallurg Magnitogorsk, if I pronounce that correctly, in the KHL. In 2023-24 as a rookie, Kantserov had an okay first go in the KHL, tallying 15 points, 8 goals, and 7 assists in 53 regular season games. However, something really seemed to click for him in the KHL postseason as he took on a much larger role and absolutely thrived in it, recording 13 points, 4 goals, and 9 assists in 23 postseason games to help Metallurg win the Gagarin Cup. For a guy who had just 15 points in 53 regular season contests, it's super noteworthy to see that type of leap in production, nearly matching his regular season output in less than half of the games that he played there in the KHL playoffs. And that really seemed to get Kantserov comfortable in the league and sparked him towards an incredible 24-25 campaign last year where he recorded 38 points, 13 goals, and 25 assists in 47 games as a 20-year-old. Super impressive for the league that he was playing against in the competition. For his age, he was the second leading scorer on the team, and he was actually one of the leading scorers in the entire KHL heading into the start of the new year. I believe as of January 10th, he was just one of 4 players in the league who was averaging above a point per game margin. Unfortunately, his production did fall off in the second half of the season and in the playoffs as he wound up tallying just 2 assists in 6 postseason games. But I did read in a recent story from Tracy Myers for NHL.com. She spoke with Roman Kantserov, and he referenced the dip in his production there late in the season, and he kind of attributed that to not having a normal offseason training regimen to get him ready for the 24-25 campaign. Because as some of you may remember, Kantserov underwent offseason shoulder surgery during the Blackhawks 2024 development camp. There were pictures of him taking part in all the off-ice activities while wearing a sling. That forced him to miss a little bit of the start of the regular season, and like he said, caused his training to be perhaps not ideal conditioning wise going into the start of the year. He kind of faded as the year went on, said he didn't have enough gas left in the tank. That ultimately led to his production unfortunately dropping when Metallurg needed it the most, but still altogether for being 20 years old, I think he was definitely a top 2 U21 player in the KHL, along with Ivan Demidov, and was probably one of the best U25 players in the entire league, despite, again, being only 20 years old. So that takes us to right here, right now for Mr. Roman Kantserov, who is back with Metallurg, where he'll be entering the final season of his contract and is fully expected to come over to North America and join the Blackhawks organization when his season comes to a close. I know historically there have been some worries about Russian prospects. Honestly, that's kind of died down pretty immensely over the last half decade or so, and there's no reason to be worried about Kantserov potentially not wanting to leave Russia. This fully seems part of the plan. So super excited to see him potentially join on with the Blackhawks whenever potentially his season comes to an end in the KHL. But he's back with Metallurg once again for the 25-26 campaign. And interestingly enough, Metallurg and the KHL, they've already had some preseason action begin. So in terms of a projected role for Roman Kantserov, well, we obviously would have had a good idea of that considering the role that he played for them last year and returning to the team once again after being their second leading scorer last season. Obviously, he was going to be playing a pretty meaningful role, but it is nice to see some forward line combinations so we could exactly put our finger down into what spot Metallurg wants Kantserov in their lineup. And what was super interesting is that during a preseason tournament, which, by the way, shout out to Roman Kantserov, won MVP of that tournament, the Minsk Cup, I believe it was called. So love that start right out of the gate by Kantserov. But what I found fascinating, Blackhawks fans, is that Kantserov was playing their top line center spot, and he's been utilized, from what I've seen at least, like strictly on the wing in his first 2 seasons in the KHL. I'm not exactly sure. It makes it really tough when everything's in Russia in terms of translations and players and rosters. I'm not sure how many players Metallurg lost compared to last season. I don't know if they're short on centers this year, but I obviously found it very interesting that Kantserov, who, like I said, has played mostly on the left wing these last couple of years, was utilized as Metallurg's top line center. Something definitely to keep an eye on once the regular season opens up. But regardless if it's going to be down the middle or on the wing, Roman Kantserov should be, playing a commanding role on Metallurg's top line, as he was there for a majority of last season already. In most of their playoff games, he was playing on the top line as well. So no reason to think he's going to be anywhere else. He's going to have a super good opportunity to thrive in his final year over in Russia, playing in all of the major opportunities on the top line at 5-on-5. You know he's going to be part of the top power play unit as well. So I'm super excited to see what he's going to be able to do as he's playing one of the key roles for Metallurg here this season. As far as what I'm kind of looking for Kantserov to work on, altogether, there's, now that he's having a fully healthy offseason, there's nothing really breaking up his normal regimen. There is no excuse for Roman Kantserov to fatigue down the stretch this year like we saw out of him last season. So I just want to see him altogether work on his consistency, make the most of this top line opportunity, and really dominate offensively for this Metallurg squad. It seems like he's really going to be given the keys and have all the opportunities in the world. And given his skill set, I truly love what Roman Kantserov brings to the table. His speed. When you watch his highlights and some of his clips, he just makes it look so effortless out there. Super slick skating ability, really good on his edges, has very good top speed. He's going to be playing a massive role for this squad as well. And just the diverse skill set that he brings to the table, fast-paced, sneaky good goal scorer, good offensive instincts and playmaking ability. There's a lot to like here with Roman Kantserov, and he checks a lot of the boxes that Kyle Davidson has looked at in the draft these last couple of years. Easy prospect to fall in love with. I just want to see him be more consistent than we saw last season. And it's kind of hard, I will say, to nitpick certain parts of Kantserov's game because playing over in the KHL, we just don't get a ton of access to their games or more of anything outside of just like clips of goals and whatnot. So it's kind of hard to fine tune his game when I don't really get to see all that much of it. But considering he's a 5'9" prospect, he's going to have to be really tough on his stick and play hard on the puck, play hard in those dirty areas in order to find success over in the NHL. And from what I've seen, Kantserov is a little bit of an energizer bunny out there who doesn't back around from anything and plays a stronger game than kind of what his frame and mold would suggest. So just fine tuning those parts of his game and probably throwing on a little bit of weight before he makes that transition. But all in all, my expectations for Kantserov in his final year over in Russia, as the thumbnail says that for today's episode, his last ride over in Russia, if he stays healthy and plays, 65 to 68 game season, I fully expect Roman Kantserov to reach 50 points and possibly be on the precipice of 60. I've gone and looked at leading scorers in the KHL the last couple of seasons. It's rare to get very many players over a point per game margin in this league. It's not the highest skill. I mean, it's a strong professional league, but most of the top end skilled Russians are, over in North America. So a little bit more of a lower scoring, not as high of a production league. So I don't necessarily know if Roman Kantserov, if I expect him to reach a point per game margin for the course of the season, even though he was right there at the midway point of last year. It's just hard to get over a point per game in this league. So I'm expecting Kantserov to end up absolutely with over 50, probably somewhere right around 55 if I had to guess right here, right now. Again, only played in 47 games last year because he did miss some time early on due to injury, but wound up tallying 38 points. If he stays healthy, 50 should be well attainable for him. And I just want to see him really just make the most of this opportunity, continue to build on quality experiences that he gets at a young age, playing professional hockey in one of the top professional leagues outside of the NHL. As a 19, 20-year-old kid, all of these experiences should really bode well in the transition that Kantserov is going to be making within the next year. So I just really want to see him and expect him to take that next step as a leader of this team. And I definitely want to see an uptick in the goal scoring department. I mentioned, I think he does have a sneaky good shot. He just doesn't utilize it as much. He's definitely more of a pass first type of player, but I think he could be capable of pushing for 20 this year in the KHL. So shoot the puck a little bit more, Roman. Don't be timid out there on the ice and really thrive in that top line center or top line wing role for Metallurg in this 25-26 campaign before coming on over to North America and joining the Blackhawks organization. There is my prospect preview for 2023 second round pick Roman Kantserov. Let me know down below in the comment section, Blackhawks fans, how many points you think Roman Kantserov is going to rack up with Metallurg in the KHL this season. Coming up in just a moment here, I'll break down some coaching tendencies we've learned recently about new bench boss Jeff Blashill. But first, I do got to talk to you all real quick about Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface, both available on your laptop or your phone. And Monarch does the heavy lifting for you so that you can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks any longer. Go and use Locked On NHL in all caps, our promo code, when you check out monarchmoney.com, and you'll also get half off on your first year. Again, that's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com when you use the code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps. Before I get into segment 2, just a reminder to please go and smash that like button and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube if you enjoy the great content that I post here on a regular basis. And also go and let me know down below in the comment section which Blackhawks prospect you want to see me cover next on my new prospect preview series. For segment 2 on today's episode, though, Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times recently dropped an excellent article outlining some of the coaching tendencies that we can expect to see from new head coach Jeff Blashill. And I also listened to CHGO Blackhawks, Jay Zawoski, of course, I am forever indebted to, along with Greg Boysen, broke down Jack Hahn from Hockey Tactics, going through some of the strategies and the systems that Blashill utilized when he was the head coach of the Detroit Red Wings for 7 years. So definitely wanted to get into some of the quotes that we got from Blashill in his article with Ben Pope, and also just give my reaction to the projected strategies and systems we're expecting to see from Blashill in his first year as the Blackhawks head coach. And while I have, talked to Summer a few times about Blashill being hired, likely because of his strong familiarity with a rebuild, right? That was largely what he was in control of, or not in control of, largely what he was dealing with when he was the head coach of the Red Wings. Plus, he has tons of development work, both for a long time in the NCAA and also for a couple of years in the USHL. But I haven't really talked about his mentality, his demeanor, and kind of how he wants to go about things on the ice. And, that really shouldn't be a surprise considering we're in the middle of August. We haven't seen anything on the ice at this point in time. We haven't gotten a whole lot of quotes from Jeff Blashill, but the few ones that I have been able to see, and the more that I read about Blashill and the breakdowns of his systems, the more I really do believe undoubtedly things are going to work out for the better for the Blackhawks under his leadership than it's gone these last couple of seasons. Some of the quotes and some of the reasoning behind me feeling this way, Blackhawks fans. The first one that I wanted to bring up from Ben's article is Blashill saying, quote, "The reality is our growth will be based on how quickly our young guys mature. We'll go from a young, talented group to a group that plays winning hockey. The most exciting opportunity we have as a coaching staff is to mold our players into winning players as quickly as possible." And I know there's a lot of typical coach speak in there, right? The term winning hockey. Heard that under Luke Richardson. I would say 99.9% of head coaches utilize that phrase in some way or another during a good amount of their pressers or media availability sessions. So obviously, you want to hear promising things from your head coach. But what I really took away from that quote in particular is, one, it's definitely true. The growth of the team is going to be determined by the young players. And Kyle Davidson, I think, did that on purpose to give them all the opportunity in the world. But I do really believe the strides, if any, never know what's going to happen, knock on wood that it does, but the strides that the Blackhawks are going to make this year is because their young players are going to be better and more prepared to handle this type of situation. I don't really think it's going to come from Andre Burakovsky bouncing back or, Teuvo Teravainen having an excellent season. That's not what's going to get the Blackhawks over the hump and make them more successful than last year. It's going to be because of the young players. And I just think it was important or noteworthy to kind of outline Blashill saying that and recognizing, right, like the situation that he's in right now. I appreciate his understanding for that. And I also really like how he's apparently reached out to not only basically every player on the roster, but he's also reached out to their agents to kind of figure how best to go about communication with each player, as everyone is obviously different. And he also watched some film from the Blackhawks late last year when a lot of these young players were up on the scene to get a better sense of what he's going to be working with here in Chicago. So I love the awareness that, the young players are really going to be the difference makers here this season. And what I also wanted to say from this, while the winning hockey quote is nothing to write home about or nothing to get too excited about, I really do believe that is going to be instilled more in this team, and it's going to be evident out there on the ice. I think we are going to see more winning style of hockey and winning hockey plays out of this Blackhawks group. And the reason for that is because a lot of these young guys who are going to finally be here are winning hockey players in terms of their build and how they go about their business on the ice. Frank Nazar makes winning hockey plays with his 200-foot game and his gritty mentality despite the lack of size. Oliver Moore makes winning hockey plays with his 200-foot game. I think Sam Renzel is a winning hockey player with how active he can be with his skating ability on the back end. Artem Levshinov, while still young, I do think he's got the tools to be a winning hockey player. Anton Frondel, mold of a winning hockey player. Sasha Boisvert, Roman Kantserov, right? These hard-nosed, high-paced, high-energy guys who can make plays all over the ice. Well, not all of those guys that I mentioned are now here with the Blackhawks right now. There's more of them here this season than there was last year, and there's going to be more of them coming. So that's why I am confident that while this is a stereotypical hockey coach quote, I really do believe the Blackhawks are actually going to be able to follow up on that and be more of a winning hockey team on the ice than they've been these last couple of years, because they just have more winning hockey players. Next quote from Blashill that I wanted to bring up has to do with what he wants to be looking at, what he wants to be focused on when training camp opens up in just about 5 weeks' time. Blackhawks fans, can't come soon enough. But Blashill said, quote, "The first system we'll implement will be our back-checking track. The reason for that is it's a work ethic indicator that will show how willing our team is to work. And two, it's one of the best ways to create transition offensive opportunities by being smothering in your effort to come back as forwards. That allows your defensemen to gap up, create turnovers, and go the other way." And quite honestly, Blackhawks fans, it's not really all that different of a quote from when Luke Richardson was the head coach, right? He wanted to instill a hard work ethic, wanted to be focused on turning defense into offense. The difference between the two is, like I just mentioned a moment ago, with having more winning hockey players on the ice, that's going to make these things kind of easier, turning defense into offense. But the Blackhawks also are going to have more speed all over the ice than they've had the last few seasons because of all of these young guys. So I do really believe the transition offensive opportunities that were so hard for this team to come by, especially in the first half of last season under Luke Richardson, I do believe that's going to be easier to attain and to generate this year because of those winning hockey players and because of the speed that is going to be prevalent in the Blackhawks lineup that they've been missing for a long, long time. But I do love Blashill, along with, mentioning the winning hockey plays, talking about and focusing on the work ethic right from the get-go. I think he's going to drill into these guys' brains that you got to work hard out there on the ice. And I do think, again, there's more reasoning to believe this strategy and this mindset is going to work for this Blackhawks team, as they're kind of better equipped for that than they've been in years past. Another interesting quote from Blashill saying, quote, "We'll put a huge emphasis on our first 3 steps in any kind of transition, both from a reload perspective, but also when you create turnovers." And this is also going to tie along with the strategy that I'll get to here in just a second. But again, I do think the Blackhawks, with the amount of speed, more speed that they have in their lineup this year, they're going to be able to do more damage and transition and off of the reload because of their the amount of danger that they have in their arsenal with the feet. Also, Blashill wants the Hawks to adopt more of a shoot-first mentality, which should be music to all of our ears, especially those who have been regularly sitting up in the 300s for the last half-decade, begging everyone on this team to shoot. Definitely something these young players need some work with, and even some of the veterans who are here along with it, because the lack or the amount of passing up on scoring chances that went down last year absolutely made me want to rip my hair out at times. But as far as the strategy that we can expect to see under Jeff Blashill, he's likely going to run the 2-1-2 system that he utilized mainly when he was the head coach of the Red Wings, and it is also what Anders Sorensen utilized when he was the interim head coach last year. And again, while we're hearing a lot of the same things from Jeff Blashill as a typical head coach or as Luke Richardson, again, huge reason why I believe the Blackhawks are going to be different under Blashill's leadership is because of this 2-1-2 system, whereas Luke Richardson used a 1-2-2 because as a defensive-minded defenseman, that was probably the style that he was most comfortable in running as a first-time head coach. And also, he probably recognized that the Blackhawks didn't have a whole lot of offensive firepower last year and was probably trying to win games, 2-1, 3-2 if possible. And that obviously didn't work out well for the Blackhawks. The offense was absolutely putrid out of the gate, and that kind of left Kyle Davidson with no choice but to go in a different direction. The 1-2-2 was miserable for the Blackhawks last year, but when Anders Sorensen took over, the offense definitely had a higher upside. Connor Bedard started to wake up. Teuvo Teravainen was excellent in the final, 4 or 5 months of the season. Frank Nazar really seemed to thrive in that system as well. So I really do think it makes a lot of sense in multiple different ways for Blashill to come in and run that 2-1-2 here in Chicago. And with the 2-1-2, what you can kind of expect from this mentality altogether is the Blackhawks are going to be more aggressive out there on the ice, especially in terms of getting the puck back in both the neutral zone and the offensive zone. Having two forwards up top allows you to pressure the puck more, force some turnovers, and then go and counter in transition, potentially with an odd man rush as well. And again, with the influx of speed, the Blackhawks are going to be more dangerous than they've been in transition. And while the 2-1-2 can be susceptible, obviously you have an extra man up that can leave you susceptible to odd man rushes going the other direction. I do think the Blackhawks, with the speed and size they have on the back end, are much more situated to handle that and not be absolutely drummed in transition like they've been in seasons past. I think they're more set up to handle that kind of stuff. So they'll give up more chances, I expect, this season, especially in the first couple of months, kind of understanding Jeff Blashill's new system and, a lot of young players being on the ice. It's going to be tough for them, I'm sure, to grasp right from the get-go, but I do think altogether this is going to be much more beneficial for the Blackhawks offense. It raises their ceiling so much higher, and I do think with Connor Bedard, Frank Nazar, maybe Oliver Moore down the middle as well, plus the addition of Andre Burakovsky, who skates pretty well for a guy of his size, right? The Blackhawks, again, they have some more pieces to actually go and make the most of this system. And then also, with the 2-1-2 and under Blashill's leadership in Detroit, loved to use defensemen on the rush, mostly in the form of Mo Seider. And for the Blackhawks side of things, I think you can really see Sam Renzel, Artem Levshinov, Wyatt Kaiser, Kevin Korchinski, if he's up in the NHL, guys who have good skating ability and some good offensive instincts alongside of it are really going to thrive with this system in play. So altogether, I really do think this makes a lot of sense for the personnel that the Blackhawks are going to have up on the NHL this year. In terms of the defensive zone, it's still a little TBD, as Anders Sorensen is going to be the one running the defense this year and is obviously super familiar with all of these defenseman prospects. I don't know if they're necessarily going to want to install a new system in the D zone or exactly how they want to go about that with likely so many young players on the back end. It's going to be interesting to see what winds up happening in the D zone, but the 2-1-2 for the personnel the Blackhawks are going to have on the scene, especially late in the year, again, when you get, maybe Frondell, Boisvert, and Kantserov all joining, it's going to open up the offense much more than it's been in seasons past, and I could not be more excited about it, Blackhawks fans. So, like I said, the more I figure out Jeff Blashill's systems and his tendencies, the more excited and the more I really do believe that the Blackhawks are just going to have so much more potential with him as their head coach. Even if he wasn't my ideal target or none of your ideal targets out there as the new head coach for the Blackhawks, I think you have to admit, or you have to be excited about the potential of this team, considering how things are going to be run differently than they have over the last, 2, 3, 4 seasons. So there is an inside look at some of the tendencies and systems that Jeff Blashill likes to run, and some interesting quotes we got from that article from Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times, who always does an amazing job on the Blackhawks beat. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, before I close out today's episode, still have to get into the big rig. Pat Maroon becoming an assistant coach in the USHL. Real quick, just wanted to say thank you to everyone for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen. Here to start off your day. For your second listen, go and check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where there is no offseason, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Go and check out Locked On NHL right now on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. Segment 3, Blackhawks legend and the newly retired Pat Maroon didn't take much time riding off into the sunset before making his next career move official, as the three-time Stanley Cup champion has joined the Muskegon Lumberjacks of the USHL as an assistant coach. That is the same USHL club that, of course, Blackhawks first-round picks Sasha Boisvert and Vaslav Nestrasil have played for in the last 2 seasons before getting drafted. They're also the reigning Clark Cup champions, winning the USHL title last season. So super excited for Pat Maroon. I know, obviously, retirement can be tough for some guys, especially for someone like Maroon, who spent the last 14 years playing in the NHL, went on so many long and great summer runs. I'm sure has so many memories and has made so many friends and brothers over the years. I'm sure it's really hard for guys like that to remove themselves from basically all they've known their whole adult life. So cool to see Big Rig getting right back into the swing of it as a USHL assistant for Muskegon. And he also gets to coach his son, Anthony Thomas Maroon, who was acquired via a trade, I believe, by Muskegon back in May. So that's a super cool opportunity, getting to coach his son. I don't know how that can't put a smile on your face. And Maroon, obviously, for the wealth of knowledge and experience that he racked up throughout his playing days, throughout those late summer runs that I just referenced as a 3-time Stanley Cup champion, and just altogether from numerous accounts, well, he does have a little bit of a fiery temper sometimes out there on the ice. I mean, a super good dude from all accounts that I think Blackhawks fans, Blackhawks young players, and everyone in that locker room and everyone in the city really did appreciate in his short time here. And we heard nothing but good things about Pat Maroon coming out of the Blackhawks locker room. Got a really close relationship established with Lukas Reichel, which I'm sure for Reichs during last season, which was yet another not easy one for him, having that relationship with a seasoned veteran like Pat Maroon, who's been in and out of the lineup at times. I'm sure that had to make things at the very least a bit easier and more understandable for Lukas Reichel. And at least he got to have a guy like that alongside him, a guy who he went on to spend Christmas with. So I really do just want to say thanks again to Pat Maroon for doing such a great job as a grizzled veteran for some of these young guys with the Chicago Blackhawks in his 1 season with the organization. Wishing him all the best as an assistant now with the Muskegon Lumberjacks. And who knows, with the way Kyle Davidson likes going about things in the USHL, maybe he winds up taking a Lumberjack in the first round for the 3rd consecutive year when the 2026 NHL draft rolls around. And he'll definitely have a good guy to ask about that player in Patty Maroon. But that's going to take care of today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, everyone. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Make sure to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube if you haven't done so already, and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free wherever you may be listening to your podcast. That way you can get the latest episode as soon as it gets uploaded each and every day. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Follow me on X at Jack Bushman2, but make sure to check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey so you don't miss out on any of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Until the next episode, everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.